Our protagonist, Peabody, a sentient, highly intelligent dog with many skills, is introduced to us at the beginning of the film. Peabody had to spend his entire puppyhood alone because he was never adopted by a human due to his extremely high IQ. But despite being alone and lacking a loving family, the dog was determined to succeed in life. Peabody goes on to graduate from Harvard and quickly establishes himself as one of the greatest inventors of all time thanks to his sharp intellect and unwavering resolve. The inventive dog has created numerous cultural and technological innovations over the years. Peabody's most famous invention, which he simply calls the Wayback, is still a time machine, despite his other accomplishments. Peabody only discloses the existence of his invention to his adopted son, Sherman, because it is such a powerful creation. As they investigate various ancient civilizations, the pair occasionally uses the Wayback Machine to go back in time. A father and son travel to France one afternoon in the late 1700s on a mission to experience the French Revolution firsthand. When the pair gets there, they blend in with the French upperclassmen attending their opulent ball. This doesn't last long, though, as the poor French masses quickly storm the party and the revolution gets underway. As the aristocrats and the brilliant dog are captured and given the death penalty in the midst of the confusion, Peabody and Sherman become separated. Peabody is swiftly put on a guillotine by the outraged crowd as a designated executioner gets ready to kill him. Sherman stands among the onlookers and cries out in vain to his father. Sherman is assured that Peabody is in control and that everything will be all right. Sherman collapses in horror as the guillotine's blade falls on Peabody's head shortly after the executioner releases the lever. The angry mob revels in its victory. Their joy is short-lived, however, as they discover that the guillotine chop's remains are actually just a decapitated coconut, demonstrating that Peabody had actually staged an escape. The moment Sherman starts to faint, the clever dog appears from the underground sewers, and they both sprint away from the incident. Surprised to see him still alive, Sherman questions how he managed to get away, which prompts Peabody to explain his plan. In order to escape the trap, the clever dog appears to have carefully calculated and taken advantage of a number of circumstances, including the sun's reflection and the city's sewer system. Soon after, a group of irate French guards find the pair and surround them. In self-defense, Peabody engages the head guard in a fencing match and prevails. He then throws the sword against a boarded barricade, which causes a massive release of water. Peabody and Sherman mount aboard and surf the raging waves as the other guards are carried away. The clever dog uses the local methane gas to set off a fiery explosion that launches them out of the sewers and into a nearby forest. They get on it and finally travel home after finding the Wayback Machine there. The young boy officially starts his formal education the next day as Peabody drives him to school. Sherman demonstrates exceptional historical knowledge as he expertly responds to all of his teacher's inquiries on his first day of class. This deed quickly wins him the respect of his teacher. However, it also makes him disliked by some of the students, including Penny, the top student. A jealous Penny confronts Sherman and aggressively bullies the new student during lunch. The other students are helpless as they witness her grab the boy by the neck and call him a dog. Sherman has no choice but to bite Penny's arm, which results in significant scarring and bleeding. Later, a teacher intervened to break up the altercation. Mr. Peabody is then called to the principal's office and informed that his son was a part of the horrific accident. Peabody is surprised to learn this, because Sherman had not previously displayed any violent tendencies. However, Ms. Grunion, a Child Protective Services agent, enters the room before the worried father has a chance to complain. Ms. Grunion believes Peabody might not be a good guardian for a human child as a result of Sherman's fight. The service representative tells Peabody that she will visit his house to evaluate his suitability as a guardian in light of this. So if he doesn't pass her inspection, Sherman will eventually be taken away from him. When Peabody learns this, he makes the decision to keep the upcoming inspection a secret from Sherman and instead takes a number of proactive preparations. Peabody first chastises Sherman for his part in the altercation and invites Penny and her parents over to settle their differences. As their wards mingle upon arrival, Peabody and Penny's parents continue on to dinner. Penny is obstinate and continues to openly express her hatred for Sherman. However, the young boy makes an effort to connect with her on Peabody's orders. Unfortunately, he unintentionally reveals the location of his father's time machine in the process. Penny is taken to the Wayback machine by a gullible Sherman, who then helplessly watches as she teleports to an unidentified time period. When Sherman notices this, he runs to tell his father about the recent events. Naturally, Peabody is enraged with Sherman for revealing the location of the hidden time machine to Penny. The smart dog quickly regains his composure, though, and employs hypnosis to put Penny's parents in a trance and stop them from asking questions. As soon as the trance was over, father and son rushed to the Wayback machine to locate Penny's history in ancient Egypt. They learned there that the bad girl had become engaged to an Egyptian pharaoh. The two try to persuade Penny to leave ancient Egypt, but she is adamant about staying because she intends to inherit the pharaoh's wealth after his death. But Penny's desire to stay is short-lived because she quickly learns that the pharaoh's wife is usually killed after her husband passes away. She tries to break off the engagement out of fear and go back to Sherman and Peabody's house. The Egyptian royals, who have already captured Penny and imprisoned Peabody and his son in a subterranean crypt, forbid her from doing this, though. The resource dog locates a hidden room leading to an exit without wasting any time. However, the pair must carefully navigate a series of floor tiles, the majority of which set off a booby trap before they can cross to the other side. A genius like Peabody quickly cracks the safe section using the marked carvings on the tiles and scales to the other side of the room. Sherman quickly passes the safe tiles, following in his father's footsteps, enabling him to cross. Sherman, unlike his father, stumbles on the incorrect tile at the last row of stones, setting off the crypt's traps and collapsing its wall. When they notice this, the group rushes to the following room, where they discover a boat perched atop a treacherous slide. Father and son quickly board the ship as the crypt begins to collapse, and it takes them through a small opening that leads to the outside. Fortunately, the pair's turbulent fall is cushioned by the sand, resulting in a rough but safe landing. After both have recovered, they travel to the Egyptian palace where Penny's wedding is taking place. Together, father and son sneak into a statue in the palace and speak through it, pretending to be the god Anubis. Peabody, posing as Anubis, issues a threat to the Egyptian populace from the structure, threatening to unleash a flurry of plagues if the ceremony goes on. Fortunately, this ruse was successful in getting both the Egyptian royals and the officiating priest to cancel the ceremony. Unfortunately, the deceptive show is short-lived because the statue eventually collapses under the weight of the two people, revealing their hidden identity. Peabody and Sherman quickly rescue Penny after being discovered and flee from a horde of pursuing, enraged guards. The group successfully makes it to the Wayback machine, where they quickly board it and set out on their journey back home. While traveling, Sherman speaks with Penny and finds out the child protection agent will soon visit. He expresses his displeasure over his father keeping secrets from him after hearing the news, which greatly shocks him and leads to a huge fight between Sherman and Peabody. Before they can continue their argument, the pair, traveling through time in a time machine, unexpectedly run into a black hole. Peabody desperately tries to steer the Wayback away from danger, but the magnetic vacuum sends it into overdrive. Fortunately, the cunning dog succeeds in starting the time machine as they quickly travel to yet another ancient era. This time, they are taken to 1184 BC, just before the Trojan War begins. Peabody and Penny arrive to find a furious Sherman exiting the time pod and continuing on without them. Worried, the pair looks for Sherman and quickly finds him in the nearby city of Troy, where they discover him fleeing the ensuing war. Fortunately, Peabody gets there in time to shield Sherman from the invading enemy forces. As the ancient Trojan horse quickly approaches a nearby cliff, Penny gets stuck inside and cries out to the two for assistance. When Peabody heard her screams, he took charge and stopped the statue from moving at the very edge of the cliff by using a rope. Father and son enter the Trojan horse to rescue the young girl after saving Penny. Sherman, however, unintentionally throws off the balance of the building, causing it to start falling again. When Peabody notices this, he leaps in to save the two terrified children, blasting them from the wooden horse while doing so. The recent tragic events horrify and shock Sherman, who ultimately decides to go home with Penny. Sherman decides to take them to a location a few hours in the past, so he can meet an undead version of his father and ask for assistance there rather than returning to the present. The Wayback's processor issues Sherman a warning after he selects his desired location. The time machine cautions him against teleporting to a recent time period where he already exists, because doing so might result in the occurrence of two instances of himself in the same universe. When this occurs, a hole may form in the fabric of space-time, possibly bringing about the end of the world. A troubled Sherman decides to go ahead with the mission despite the warning, as he and Penny head back to their house. The two meet the previous Peabody in the kitchen as they teleport a few hours into the past. There, they tell him everything that happened over the previous few hours and beg for assistance in rescuing his future self. The child protection worker, Ms. Grunion, enters the room, interrupting their conversation just as the clever dog is beginning to formulate a plan. Coincidentally, Peabody's future self shows up at the same time, hence revealing that he wasn't actually killed in the collision as they had been led to believe. To make matters worse, the modern Sherman also shows up on the scene and creates two duplicates of the father and son. A wormhole materializes and sucks in both Peabody and Sherman copies as they merge into a single original form before either party has a chance to comprehend this. Ms. Grunion, who had watched the whole thing play out, was already suspicious, so she declares the dog guardian unfit to be a parent and takes Sherman away. The courageous youngster, however, escapes her hold and joins Peabody and Penny as the group travels back in time. They attempt to go back in time on it to clean up their mess. They are aware that the merging of their two versions has caused the space-time continuum to become unstable. Therefore, they are unable to go back in time. A number of wormholes also appear in the sky as a result of the erratic space-time dimension. Many well-known historical figures, including Einstein, Da Vinci, and George Washington, are transported to the present from it. Giant rocks and artifacts are also teleported to the present in a matter of minutes, crushing the city and posing a threat to the survival of the modern world. The group eventually understands that teleporting to the future would fix and restore the proper flow of time in order to correct the fatal space-time anomaly. Through their combined efforts, Sherman and Peabody were able to fully charge the Wayback. Use it to go into the future for the first time ever, a few seconds. As expected, their strategy is successful and all the items and people they previously transported into the present are sucked up by the emerging wormholes. Consequently, returning them to their original time periods and re-establishing the timeline's regular progression, the final scene of the film shows Peabody driving Sherman to school. Thus, it was implied that the devoted father had won back custody of his son. This concludes the recap of animation. I appreciate you coming.